I am excited to talk about all things finances this morning. So what we're going to tackle over this next hour is actually building a one-page finance plan for your business. We're going to walk you through a little bit of an example of what that would look like with a case study we're going to call Wendy. But as we go along, I want you to really be thinking through how could you build this one-page finance plan for your own company. And on our website, we have a free download of the same template we're going to walk through, and we're going to really try to make finance as fun as we possibly can this morning. So let's kind of dive in. You might be wondering, who am I? So my name is Carolyn Sissons, as Mark mentioned, and I run the Finance Learning Lab, and it's really intended as a hub to be able to help solopreneurs and small business owners. So we have a YouTube channel where we share all kinds of questions, and we have some free e-learning courses on our website as well. But today what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of serve as your guide, and we're actually going to go from a blank piece of paper, a blank template, and build out for a web designer that we're going to call Wendy. We're going to actually build out her one-page finance plan. So I know when you think of finances, there's probably so many things that can be really, really overwhelming. What are we actually talking about? We're going to take it step by step so that hopefully as we go along each of these different steps, you can start to picture and say, you know what, if I'm a coach, how would this look like for my business? Or if I'm doing digital marketing for someone, how would I go about building a one-page finance plan? And certainly, as Mark mentioned, if you kind of have some questions or you're wondering, how do I apply this to my own business, or you kind of want to maybe be a hot seat question, we can certainly carve out a little bit of time to tackle that for you as well. So you might be wondering, why should I be building a financial plan? So this is going to be the template we're going to walk through, but you might be wondering, I have so much on my plate. I'm always trying to get new customers. I'm running around doing all these different things on social media. Why do I carve out time to build a financial plan? And it's actually a really good question. There's quite a few different reasons, but 5 primary reasons that you really want to carve out a little bit of time to build your financial plan. And what it lets you do is actually proactively monitor your spend. So if you're running a business, you're certainly spending money on different things. You might be spending money on marketing. You might be spending money on building a website. You might be spending money just on all these day-to-day aspects. This lets you kind of proactively kind of play the equivalent of the bird's eye view of what's going to be happening over the next few months so you can proactively monitor what you're spending. The second reason you're really going to want to build a financial plan is no one really wants to find themselves with a cash pinch point, right? We all wish that we lived in a world where we were flush with cash and cash was never an issue. But if cash is going to be a bit of a pinch point, it's a lot better to know that cash is a pinch point is going to be a pinch point, 60 or 90 days from now, as opposed to trying to pay for something and realizing, yep, I want you to buy something today and there's no cash there and available. So your financial plan can help you identify pinch points and really buy you extra time so that you can think through, what do I need to do differently to avoid that to turn it from a really serious catastrophe or crisis of having no money into just kind of an inconvenience of having, 60 days to plan out and find a way to adjust your cash. The third reason is that it can actually help you identify new revenue opportunities. So often when we're running a business or we're planning to start a business, we're kind of in the midst of things, right? We're in the weeds, we're in the day-to-day. So if we're helping our clients do whatever they need, or we're spending our time trying to acquire different clients. But this lets us actually step back and look and work on our business instead of just working in our business. So again, it gives you that bird's eye view. And through that bird's eye view and through kind of giving yourself this time to look more holistically at your business, you can start to say, wait a minute, these types of jobs, I'm actually really making a lot of money on. Maybe I'm better off pursuing these particular gigs or these particular types of clients. And you might end up realizing that other areas where you've been spending a lot of time and effort aren't necessarily the areas that are really bringing in the most profit into your business. So a finance plan can actually help you ultimately be able to get that bird's eye view and identify areas that you could actually be pursuing revenue that you just hadn't even thought through. And reason number 4 is to stop feeling so stressed. We live in a world where we're all far, far too stressed over so many different things. And kind of having a plan is a way just to give you that feeling of comfort and that feeling of confidence and that feeling that you're in control of your business. Your plan may not go completely to plan. We know that that's always what happens, but at least it gives you that much of a starting point and that much of you can really focus on execution when you need to be executing. And lastly, what business isn't looking for more money, whether that's more funding or whether that's more clients and more revenue coming in? We're all looking to find a way to grow our business. And by putting a financial plan together, you're that much better positioned to be able to make more money because you identify the opportunities, or by even having it written down on a piece of paper, you can actually share your plan with some of your trusted advisors, maybe some different, maybe some even different strategists at business. Like, that you can kind of say, here is my finance plan. Can you give me some other insights on what I maybe could be doing? And by really putting it together on a simple one-page plan, you're able to leverage not only your own thoughts on how you can make more money, but from the thoughts and the ideas and the inputs from the people that from outside perspectives that really can help you drive more profitability into your business. So if that sounds good, what we're actually going to do is essentially dive right in to building your plan. But if you needed one final sixth reason of why you want to be building a finance plan, we can look to the trusty Benjamin Franklin saying that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And I think if we look at some of the statistics of small businesses need every single opportunity out there to be able to make it. And I think if a financial plan can give you even a smidge of a competitive opportunity to make it, then let's do it. So with that, let's actually dive in. And so what we're going to do for the rest of the session is going to be very, very hands-on. What I'm going to do in a moment is actually transition into an Excel sheet. And we're going to really build this financial plan together. Because sometimes when you hear of a financial plan, it's like, okay, yeah, it's something that I should do. And hopefully by now you're bought into the reasons why, the 5 reasons that you really, really want to be building your own financial plan. But your next question might be, well, how do I get started? And it is human nature to feel like a financial plan is this like big, overwhelming issue, and it snowballs in your mind, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just not ultimately going, I'll do it tomorrow or next week or sometime when I have a chance to tackle it. And so what I really hope you're going to be able to take away from this is a realization that building a financial plan doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's something we're going to do together over the next hour. And yeah, hopefully by using this little example, it'll help make it a little bit more concrete for you. So we're going to look at Wendy's story, and I'm going to share a quick video here for you, about 30-second video that you can kind of get ourselves into the scene, and we're going to pretend to be Wendy, and we're going to build her financial plan. So give me one quick second. I'm going to pop on the video, and then I'll check for some questions after that. So if you have any kind of questions that have been kind of trickling in on the chat, I'll maybe ask Mark if any comments or anything has come in after this 30-second video. So give me one quick second here. Here we go. We're going to meet Wendy the Web Designer. All right, so now you've met a little bit of Wendy. We're going to dive in a second into actually like building step by step, building out her full financial plan. But maybe I'll just take a quick second to pause and see, Mark, if there was any questions that came in or any comments so far.
Yeah, so actually nothing so far from our participants, which is great. One thing I'll just sort of want to address or kind of ask you myself, because I hear it a lot from clients, is that how do I know what to project my sales is going to be? And I imagine this plan will give them a step toward doing something like that as well.
Exactly. It's such a tricky thing, right? Because if anyone had a crystal ball to be able to know what their sales were going to be, that would be wonderful. So a lot of large companies have the added advantage of having been in business for years and years and years. So the way that a lot of large companies go about building their finance plan is they look at like what happened in the past. And so once you've been in business for a really long time period, you can start looking to the past. But when you're brand new and just starting out, you don't necessarily have years and years of past traction. Or you also maybe you were just kind of in those like starting out phases. So one of the things that can be really helpful, so partly it is going to be subjective, right? You're going to kind of be coming up with what your best guess is, but the truth is a forecast is a guess. So it's not going to be perfect. One of the strategies that can be really helpful, and I'll walk through this as a bit of an example with Wendy, is building out different scenarios. So you're going to kind of do what we call your base case or your best guess at what you think is likely to happen. And then we'll kind of be able to do a scenario where we think, what if it was even better? What if it was even worse? And what that gives you is ultimately not a one-page finance plan. It's actually 3 different finance plans that you kind of know if things go amazing or if things go really poorly. It gives you that many more options to be able to plan in advance. But it's true, there's not a perfect science. But hopefully when we dive into the template, one of the things that we're going to think through are what are the drivers behind the sales projections? And hopefully that'll be a second clue that you can kind of use to take your guess from a wild guess into something a little bit more refined. Yeah, great question. Okay, so I'm going to open Excel sheet here. 1 second again, just to open this guy up. All right. And can you still see my screen or do I need to reshare it? Here we go. I think I may need to reshare.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So this is what your template is going to look like. And you can get a free copy of this, like I mentioned, just on the on our website. I can drop the link in at the very end. But what I want you to remember when you're doing a finance plan on a page is keep it really simple. Remember, the number one barrier that you're going to face when it comes to building a finance plan is you're going to be your tendency to make it absolutely 100% perfect. And to make your finance plan 100% perfect, you're going to make it so complicated and you're going to snowball it in your brain that you're never going to actually do it. And so my motto is oftentimes that a bad finance plan is better than no finance plan at all. Because a bad finance plan, you can tweak, you can refine, you can get better assumptions as you go. And ultimately, you are the audience of this plan, right? This plan is intended primarily to help you. It's a tool. So if you were thinking of a construction worker isn't going to use a tool that isn't going to help them accomplish their particular job. Your finance plan has to be something that's going to help you make more money. So if you overcomplicate it, you'll end up not using it or not going back to it. So make sure that you adjust and you tweak it into something that's easy for you to understand and something that you're going to use. So this is kind of the template that you get. And I'll kind of walk you through a kind of a high level orientation of how do you make sense of this? Because I know for some of us, when we open something in Excel, it's like this immediate part of our brain that shuts down and says, oh, it's a table, it's going to be numbers. Like your brain just shuts down and like wants to run away. So there's a few sections that we're going to kind of look through. So what you're going to see is 2 sections. We got a section over here with all of the numbers and a section over here that we're just calling our parking lot, where you're going to be able to put in words. So these columns here, A to N, are going to be numbers. Columns P to U are going to be words. And it's important to really look at both when you're putting together a financial plan, because if we go back to why you're creating a financial plan in the first place, part of the reason is so that you can ultimately drive more profitability into your company, bring more money in, be able to kind of anticipate and do something based on it, right? You're not just putting it together so that you can frame it and put it on the wall. You're putting it together so you can take actions based on it. So that's why we have this section here called parking lot. And this is going to be when you're actually putting together your financial plan, it's going to trigger for you, oh, wait, I need to do this, or, oh, wait, I need to do that. It's literally all you're going to do is type in here your different reminders that come to mind, right? So that you can kind of focus on still building it out. But there might be some different outstanding issues. So you might say, hey, my bookkeeper reached out and still needs these different things. That'll come to mind. You want to just be capturing some of the pieces under here. But the more important section is going to be the different opportunities. So what you want, and a common trap, I think you could say, is that people will spend all of this time putting together a financial plan and gathering up all their revenue projections and gathering up all their expense projections. But they forget that part of the reason that you're doing this is so that you can step back, look at it, and identify financial opportunities for your business. So these will be where you'll actually populate the numbers. Remember, columns A to N is where we're going to plop the different numbers in. But over here with the opportunities is where we're going to say, well, wait a minute, based on what I'm seeing here, what if I introduced a new package? What if I targeted this type of client? What if I did all of these different things? So you're going to want to kind of capture some of those opportunities in here. So your financial plan is really a living, breathing document. So we tackled the qualitative side, right? The part where you're going to type in some different things, outstanding things that come to mind, and then some different opportunities. Now let's do the scary part, which is the numbers, and it's not too scary. Don't worry. You're going to look at 3 different categories in this numbers section. We're going to have revenue, which is going to be the money coming into your business that you're getting from clients, that you're getting from sales. And that's going to be all of this section down here. And like I said, we're going to tackle this for Wendy. So this is just getting you oriented on what the template looks like. So revenue is going to be all your money coming in the door. That's one section. Section 2 is going to be expenses. And this is where we're going to brainstorm for Wendy, what are the expenses that she's likely to have if she's a web developer? And then you're going to do the same thing for whatever your business is. What are these different expenses? So that's section 2. Section 1 is revenue. Section 2 is expenses. So money in, money out. But the whole reason we're looking at money in and money out is so that we can get to this fancy little line at the bottom, which is oftentimes called profit. We're going to keep it simple on the lingo. We're just going to call it, what's your bottom line? Like, how much money are you really making? And this is nothing scarier than a formula that's taking all of your revenue less all of your expenses, and that's what's going to be left. So by using this template, what we're going to do is really go through the structured process of thinking through, where is money coming in for my business? Take it out of your head and put it onto one place, and then go through an exercise of brainstorming all the different expenses and all the different things that are all over the place. Again, take them from things that are trapped in your head and things that are just coming onto your credit card and things that are kind of going all over the place, put them in one central spot, and then ultimately say, once we have this picture, what's actually left, and based on what's left, what are the opportunities? What should we do based on what we see there, right? Because some of you might start populating this and say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't really leave as much money as I thought. And so you're going to want to refine your plan to be able to make adjustments to your company and make adjustments to your plan to be able to bring more money in. So that is what we're going to do. So I guess the final thing that I'll kind of mention is we separate your finance plan into the past and into the future. So I think we're going to take off from about July or August, whenever we go to do the section on this one here for Wendy. But what I want you to notice is your finance plan is a blend of 2 types of data, right? We talked about it being your revenue, your money coming in, your expenses, your money going out, and a bottom line. But there's one other distinction, which is all the numbers we're populating, are they based on the past or based on the future? And really, in an ideal scenario, you're going to use a little bit of a blend. We're going to focus a little bit more on the future because with the future, you can still influence and do something about it. If we just went through a big time-consuming exercise to fill out what happened in the past with Wendy's business, Wendy can't change what happened in the past, right? If she's already spent money on a particular expense in the past, she can populate it in here from her accounting records and kind of know and have that as a little bit of a history. But when the money's been spent, it's already been spent, right? Or if she got the clients and she got the work, it's already happened. Or if she didn't get it, it's already happened. So put a lot less emphasis on the past. Think of that as kind of the nice to have once you've kind of got yourself into a good routine with your financial plan. You can do the step of going into whatever, whether you're tracking your accounting with QuickBooks or a different software or even using Excel, you can always go through and populate this here just to give you an even bigger picture of what's been happening. But really the magic of the finance plan happens whenever you're focused on the future, because you can still influence the future, right? Like the best way to, what do they say that expression is? The best way to anticipate the future is to create it. So I think it's something along those lines. I don't know who that quote was attributed to, but we're going to put most of our emphasis onto the future. The past side, if you're feeling extra ambitious and you want to go and populate it for where you're at in the year, you can get a gold star for populating that piece. But really, we're going to focus on the future. So So with that, let's actually go line by line and see what will this look like for Wendy. And remember, as we're going through, you're going to be thinking through your own business. So we're going to start with revenues, and we're going to start tackling revenue streams. So the template is set up for up to 8 different revenue streams. Now, you're probably thinking, what is a revenue stream? Because in data, if you're a photographer, you don't go about your day saying, oh, hello, revenue stream. Like you think about clients that need pictures taken, or if you're doing social media for someone, you think about like how many hours am I working for this particular client, right? So revenue stream is just kind of like a fancy finance and accounting way of saying of taking the money that you're getting from your clients and breaking it into 2 parts. So one part is the price per unit, and the other part is the number of units. So still sounds a little bit abstract. So how we can kind of think about this is if you were a photographer, for example, your revenue stream is, let's pretend you're a simple photographer that has one package and one package only, which is you do family photography and you charge $200 per session. Your revenue stream would be $200, that's your price point, and however many client packages you're planning to sell in the month of July. Now, you might actually find when you're starting a business, once you've been in business for a really long time, you probably have pretty well refined revenue streams, right? Across time, you figured out, these are the 3 packages that sell the best, and you'll have a lot of that kind of ironed out. But when you're first starting, you might be testing out different price points. You might be testing out different packages and different bundles. You're going to be trying out all kinds of different things. So that's why we have up to 8 different categories in here for you to be able to break it into, maybe you tried out a package at $200 and you realized, oh, that's not enough money for me to pay my bills. And other photographers are charging, $500 per package. So you can use all of these different lines to put in different packages that you might be offering. And how you're going to look at it is revenue stream. When I was kind of saying there's 2 components to each revenue stream, it's the number of units and the price per unit. Times those 2 together gives you a revenue stream dollar. So what does this look like for Wendy's first revenue stream? Well, Wendy's first revenue stream we can see here is that she has a built for you. So she's a web designer, remember? So she has this built for you package that will build a website for clients. She'll charge them $1,500, and she's hoping that in the month of July, she's going to be able to land 3 clients. So what you see here when you're seeing $4,500, it's nothing more sophisticated than price, number of units, here's the revenue. And so by populating that in there, we can actually see what her end of year revenue is going to be. And she can play around with this because she might not necessarily know. She might be thinking in August, you know what, I might actually end up getting 4 clients, or maybe word of mouth really, really takes off and she's in high demand. She can change that to 6 and she can say, okay, here's going to be the revenue associated with it. So if she wants to, she can really kind of play around and tweak these different things. And what she can see is if I tweak that, what's my revenue going to be from this particular revenue stream by the end of the year? The other thing that she could also do in here is to say, well, all right, I'm wondering, like, is $1,500 the right price point? What would happen if I changed my prices to $2,000? You could kind of put some different things in there, and she can actually start to get an idea to say, like, what will that look like for me as the year goes on? So that's going to be her first revenue stream. And really remember, again, always come back to the fact that your one-page finance plan is your tool for you to make better decisions. So this doesn't get submitted to the government. You don't have to give this to your accountant. This is something that helps you plan how you're going to make more money. So you're allowed to treat it like a living document, and you're allowed to say, oh, you know what? I really thought that client was going to come through, but now they're busy with other things. I think it's only going to be 5. So you'll kind of play around with some of the different variables in here. Now, to go back to Mark's earlier question, when you're first starting, your guesses are going to be far less right than when you have a lot more history going along the way. So when I was kind of mentioning that you might want to have a base case scenario, you may also want to build out a best and a worst case scenario. So I'll show you what that looks like, and you will probably want to do those different scenarios at the very end, but I'll show you with just this one very simple scenario in here. So Wendy has kind of decided that she thinks September is going to be, great month, 7 different clients, but she also knows it may not actually work out. So this is what she thinks is the most likely. She's going to end the year with 42K. But Wendy is a little bit, she's a little bit of a pessimistic person, and she wants to know, listen, if I don't get enough different clients, like what happens if my clients say, you're not a good enough web designer to be earning $1,500 and we're only going to pay you $1,000? She might create on here what we call her worst case scenario. And I'll show you what I'm doing on here in the steps I just went through. So what I did and what you kind of
noticed, yeah. Just really quickly before you carry on there, we're wondering if maybe just as you're talking about the numbers here, would it be possible to do a bit of a zoom in on the area that you're working, just to make it a little bit easier to visualize?
Absolutely. Yes. Great point. Yes, that's a really good. So I'll put this kind of in a bright yellow so you can see the areas. Good point here. There we go.
Or I think it might even be more like to just zoom in on the view, like maybe make it 125%. Yeah. There.
Is that better? Okay, perfect.
I think that looks better. Yeah.
There. Okay, perfect. Okay. So yeah, what we've been tackling is we kind of think of those 3 sections in the finance plan: the revenues, the expenses, and the bottom line. What we've been tackling is a lot of the revenue part, and we're kind of going through one of these different revenue streams. So I'll kind of highlight it in yellow. You can see the sections that I'm working on in here. So we have one tab open right now, and this is Wendy's most likely, we'll call it base case scenario. The terminology you use for it isn't super important. What you want is this is what you think is base case, most likely. It's your best guess. But Wendy is what we're going to call very pessimistic. So Wendy is going to want to not only have this plan where she's anticipating making 4,200, she wants to know, listen, if the sky starts to fall and things just don't work out, what am I looking at as a worst case scenario? So what you'll do is very, very simple. If you've used Excel, you'll be extremely familiar with this. If you're new to using Excel, just follow along. It's just a few different clicks. So what I'm doing right now is I'm navigating down here to this bottom tab. And I'll try to zoom it so you can see it a little bit better down here. Kind of down here, see this tab that says Wendy the Web Designer? What I'm going to do with my mouse is actually right click, and I'm doing move or copy. Okay, so move or copy. All that's allowing me to do is to take this page that I've already created, click create a copy, and look at what it's done. It's just duplicated it. So this one here shows up. Now all of a sudden we have a new tab in here. And this new tab, what you can do is rename it as worst case scenario. And that's where, if you're really wanting to say, all right, when we were saying the example of kind of going back here for her revenue stream, she thinks she can charge this much money, but she might be wrong. People might not be, the market might not be willing to spend that. She can actually change her prices in here, and she can kind of say, okay, by October, I think I'll try to charge $1,200. She can play around with all of those different variables in here. And maybe she wants to say, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually do 5 clients a month because I'm pretty new to it. So let's stick with 3. So what she's doing here, what we've basically just done in here was we went back to her main 1-page finance plan. And I'll redo the steps so you can kind of follow along, but we created a copy of this tab. And if you remember our original plan, her most likely scenario is telling her she's going to make 42K. Now, if we go to her worst case scenario, anyone want to take a guess at what her worst case scenario is going to be whenever we play around with all of these different variables? Well, this lets us actually see that her worst case scenario is 19K. So it gives a pretty wide discrepancy of what is going to end up happening in there. So I'll walk you through the same concept so you can see again exactly how I kind of created this. It basically is just where you're taking your primary plan and you're saying, a what if scenario. What if things were worse? And so to show you again what I did is I went to the main plan that we have on here. And with the mouse, again, I'm right clicking, I'm doing move or copy, click create a copy, and it's duplicating what I have in here. And maybe this one, we're going to want to call it her best case scenario. So this is where she wants to say, you know what if clients really love my work and they're willing to spend $2,000 on my particular package. And let's say I am actually able to do 5 packages a month. What would that actually look like? So you just play around with all the different variables in here, and you can see that if you remember on the other page, her most likely scenario was going to be 4,200, and we actually see on here, oops, $60K in her best case scenario. So if we kind of think high level, we created a base plan for her of what she thinks is most likely. We created a worst case, really bad scenario. We created a really good scenario. And so what that lets Wendy do is actually be able to kind of plan and figure out, like, if the worst were to happen, what would I do now to help myself? Or if the best were to happen, where will I travel when we can travel again? Or kind of be able to have a little bit of fun with it. So that is kind of one of the techniques that you can use whenever you are really, really uncertain of what that range is going to be. Over time, you really want that range to start getting informed based on history, right? So the longer you've been in business, the longer you're going to be more informed based on what happened in the past. So with Wendy, her range is pretty big, right? She might be making 20K, she might be making 40, she might be making 60. She really doesn't know. But as she gets more experience, those outer ranges should be getting more and more and more narrow. But yeah, when you're starting out, you really don't have a lot of past history. So doing those different scenarios can just give you a little bit more information. Okay.
Carolyn, so a couple of quick questions here. One has to do with the formatting of how you've labeled the lines. Maybe if you can just scroll to the left a little bit there. Alana was asking why wouldn't the Built for You package be revenue stream 1? I think you're just naming it at the top, right? And then leaving the number 1.
Yeah. Exactly. So your revenue stream 1 could be something totally different. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You're allowed to call them whatever you want to call them. And you may not need all 8 revenue streams, right? This is just a template. If you only have one revenue stream, so let's say the photographer that does the one package, that's what you're going to include in there. Now your revenue stream 1, because this is a template, we're calling it revenue stream 1, but you might actually want to relabel it. And remember that this page, this template is for you. So if I was Wendy, I might want to say, let's say Wendy calls her website simple package, basic. Well, she can call it whatever she wants to call it. What's important to remember is kind of like, imagine the first line is the price that you're charging. The second line is the number of units. And the third line is going to be the ultimate revenue money in the door. So always kind of remember that simple equation of first line is what you're charging, second line is number of units, and the third line is going to give you like what's your ultimate revenue. So let's do another kind of example, and hopefully we'll see that she here.
Just one more question, just before you jump to the next one, because I think you actually might address it here as well, but Hasham was asking, what's when you say let's see if the clients are willing to pay more, you're thinking, isn't it up to the entrepreneur to price the product? I suppose you're imagining this is an experimental kind of stage. Is that what you're
Exactly. Thinking? So in a perfect world, as the entrepreneur, you set what the price is. So let's say that we're Wendy Web Designer, and I am decided that, you know what, I'm going to offer a web package, and I'm going to sell my web package for $250K. So she can absolutely offer it for $250K. She may, if she's just starting out, have a hard time finding people that are willing to pay it. So you're kind of always trying to marry the combination of what you want to charge with what people are willing to pay. So she could, in theory, say, she could have built her plan. She could have said, you know what, when I start my business, I anticipate being able to price my packages at, $2.5 million, obviously. Hopefully, I think Wendy might want to do a little market research if she's thinking that. But you absolutely can. But what you might end up finding, the variable would be that she can offer it, but she might not get 3 clients. She might ultimately get 0 clients. And then she might realize in August, if I keep charging 2.5 million, no one's going to buy it. So you're kind of always doing this calibration between you as the entrepreneur trying to essentially charge as much as you possibly can, and the client trying to not necessarily pay the less, but get the best value or get the best bang for it. So you can definitely set your own prices, but it's going to ultimately get refined across time, because obviously that's an extreme. No one's going to charge that price, but it kind of illustrates the example. So yeah, absolutely. You set the prices, but you might refine them, especially in those first 6 months, 6 to 12 months that you're running your business. You're going to have a really good plan for what you're going to charge things, but you might end up wanting to iterate, and you might end up saying, and you might be wondering, like, if she can charge $1,500 for it, why would she ever lower her prices? And for some people that won't make sense. For some people, they won't want to lower their prices, and that'll be the right decision. But she might say, well, hold up. If I did lower my prices to, say, a package of $997, all of a sudden, I don't think I can get 5 clients. I think I could get 8. What would happen if I played around with that the rest of the year and I just set lower prices but more clients? Would that give me more? And let's see what it gives for her. Actually would give her less. So she would really be able to say, look, it's not going to be worth my while to lower my prices unless by lowering my prices, I can actually get 10 more clients a month. So those are the things that it can kind of just let her look at it, and she can start to say strategically, how much should I be charging? And she can kind of play around with, like, if I lower my prices, do I get enough even more clients to justify it? And in this case, she might say, you know what? 10 clients at $997 is not worth it. I would rather go back to having only 3 clients a month, but a little bit more manageable workload. And ultimately, what I'm able to earn from that is not dramatically different, for example. The second line here, you'll kind of be able to see, is really, really similar to the first line. So I'm going to unhighlight the yellow that we had in here. So we're going to be now looking on revenue stream number 2. And you're going to see that revenue stream number 2 operates exactly the same way as revenue stream number 1. This is what we're going to call her premium package. And this is going to be, we'll call her elaborate fancy website package. And this one, she's going to charge $2,500. And she's not going to start doing that until September, because she's just not quite ready to, or maybe she's not going to start doing that until later on. She's just going to play around with it. But you'll see that it's functioning exactly the same way. It's taking the price of her package, $2,500, and it's taking the number of units, 4, and then it's just doing the calculation. So you might be wondering, well, why do that on a separate line? Like, why not just change it up here and say, well, she's now going to start charging $2,500? You absolutely can. You can play with it in either areas, but I would recommend a separate row if you think that long-term these are going to be different packages. Because what becomes really tricky is if you try to do it all on one row, you're going to be mixing together different variables. So if you want to, you absolutely can. But I kind of like to be able to say, like, to be able to look at the end of the year and say, how much am I making from this product line? How much am I making from this product line? Because it can just help inform what you're going to be doing going forward. But yeah, if you're wondering, do I have to use revenue stream 2? Could I just blend them together? You can, but again, remember that you're the audience for it. And by separating it out, it might help you do a bit more analysis. Now, Wendy has a third revenue stream, and this one's going to look way different. So if you look at her first 2 is like a web package that she's charging like a bundle. The second one, she's charging a bundle. But take a look at what happens down here below. All of a sudden, we're doing, it turned out that I'm going to unhighlight it so you can see a little bit more closely what section I'm on. All of a sudden, we're seeing that Wendy is not only doing packages, but she's also doing a little bit of hourly work. So she's wanting to get to the point of doing packages, but you know what? She has a former employer that just wants to hire her for 15 hours a month, and they're going to have her pay them as a subcontractor. She's going to pay, $75 an hour. So you see that it's the exact same concept, but instead of it being a package that she's selling for $1,500 and selling 3 packages, it's an hourly rate of $75, and she's working for them for 15 hours. So you can do the same thing if you are someone that bills on an hourly basis. And you might find that your business is a blend, right? Your business might have some packages, but you might also just be doing some set pieces of work every month. So she could play around with this and actually negotiate down a lower price, or she could go up to a higher price. And she could play around when she's like, you know what, in October it's a really slow month, so I don't think I'll have any hours in October, but I really think in November there's a busy project going on and it'll be 40 hours. What it's doing is the exact same, very simple calculation. Number of units, which in this case is how many hours she's working. Hourly rate, which is just kind of what's she getting paid hourly, kind of like the hourly equivalent, and it's popping out a revenue stream. So this is what, especially when you're, again, in those like first few years of running your business, sometimes you're going to have some legacy contracts and legacy agreements that you might have just been doing whenever it was more of a side hustle, and you might choose to kind of keep those coming in. So if you like, you can always use these rows to be able to capture those. And again, when we say revenue stream, what you can do here is call it, we'll call it contract gig with old boss, let's call it. And you can really break it down, and you could do the same thing. So in her case, she only has one, but maybe she also was going to be doing hourly work, other contract gig with someone else. And maybe that's not going to be at $50 an hour. Maybe that one is only at $40 an hour. And so you can kind of play around with those different variables in here. But what it's letting you do is plan ahead, where is all my revenue going to come from? And what are the two variables that really pull it together into revenue? So you go through that. Now, if you don't need any of the other categories, we'll keep rolling all the way down. So Wendy really only has these, she really only has these two revenue categories, we'll call them, right? Simple website package, fancy website package, and a contract gig. And so she's not actually going to be using any of the other sections. So you can either just completely delete it, you can hide it, or you can just leave it as is. But what she's going to be able to now see is down here below, what this lets her be able to have visibility into is, in the month of July, how much revenue am I going to bring in? And, oh, what's happening here? Looks like October is going to be an amazing month. So it gives her two types of visibility. Visibility one is month by month, how much she can expect to bring in. And visibility two is service and product type by service and product type, how much am I making from all of these different areas? So that's the revenue side of it. Now, when it comes down to the expenses are a little bit more intuitive because a lot of us kind of have a more deeper understanding of expenses, right? Whereas revenue, we don't always think of revenue in terms of the drivers of price and units, but expenses is a little bit easier. So what I find helpful when it comes to coming up with your expenses category, or what I would say a stumbling block that a lot of times people end up in, is they'll just start here and they'll populate one, and then they'll say, so here's what not to do. So people will start and they'll say, okay, I've got a home office and I think it's $1,000. And then they'll say, ooh, but is it 800? I better put this away, go do some research, come back and say, you know what, it's actually $900. Oh, but I think our lease is going up. It could be $1,200. And then they get fully distracted because they go back, they get their lease and they get sucked into their email and they never actually come back and finish it all out, right? Or they'll say, well, what's my web hosting? Okay, I'll get distracted. I'll go track it all down. So it sounds like it wouldn't make a difference, but what actually can really help is to break it into two steps. Step one is where you're just brainstorming the expense categories. And you're going to be so tempted to you're going to be so tempted to be like, home office, let me just go populate it straight away. But you want to break it down in your head to say, what are all the expense categories? Because you want to make sure that you're not forgetting any expenses. That is the real risk. What people end up doing is they get really, really sidetracked with, is my home office, is it, is this web hosting $21 or $25? And they'll go down this this very, very teeny tiny area, and they'll completely forget that every month they also have to spend on taxes or email or whatever. So get a pen and a paper and jot down for you all the different expense categories that come immediately to mind. You can put it directly into the template. You can grab a piece of paper. It will be unique for everyone's business. But step one is do a brain dump of everything that comes to mind. So just off the top of your head, fill them all in. So she might also be like, oh, but also I need, I have a subscription with Shutterstock for stock photography. And so she ends up remembering that. Now, the second thing you're going to do is if you already have bookkeeping set up, you're going to actually go through your expenses on your profit and loss statement and look and see, like, what did I miss? If you don't have that set up, just go get a past bank record and just, eyeball it and say, like, what did I possibly miss in there? But try to come up with as many of the categories that you know immediately. Then go and populate the dollar amounts. Now, you might be saying, but what if I still forget something? In all likelihood, the first time you're building a finance plan, you will probably forget one or two things. What you want to always remember is this plan is by you for you. So what you're going to do, so if we were pretending that she had built this plan in July, what she's going to do in July is come back and say, how did I ultimately do? And what she's going to realize is if she forgot some different expenses, she's going to be looking and saying, so I was expecting these, dozen or so expenses, but my expenses were way higher. What happened? And that's going to help her be able to refine the expenses and keep building on this list as time goes by. So step one, yes.
Oh, sorry. Trying to look for a moment to toss something there. This is a question that just comes to mind again from working with clients. So I'm curious to get your thoughts about on this expense side. What do you think about how to represent paying yourself as a brand new entrepreneur? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you'd include that here in your
Totally. There's two ways you could do it. So there's two ways you can pay yourself, and there's different ways you can represent it. So you can either pay yourself as salary or you can pay yourself as dividends. What I honestly would think of is so let's imagine you're a scenario that you're the only owner of the company, or maybe there's just two owners in there. I personally like to actually just treat the bottom line as the money you're going to pay yourself. And the reason I like that is it gives you a truer picture of how much money is really left for you, regardless of whether you pay it as a salary or whether you pay it as like an owner's draw or a dividend. This is going to let you know that you're going to be making $1,600. But the other alternative, if you wanted to, could be to say, I'm going to pay myself a salary because I really want to make sure I get paid. So let's pretend this was in a home office. Let's pretend this one was a salary. And let's say when you're starting your business, you want to say, I really want to be paying myself at least $3,000 a month, right? That's really, really important to me. So you could populate it down here. The challenge with populating the salary or dividend in here is that when you come down here, you're saying like, okay, well, I'm losing money, I'm losing money, I'm losing money, I'm making money, but you're losing money only to the extent that it makes it slightly more complicated to realize how you're really doing. So that's why I like to treat this one as really treat the bottom line as what you're going to be paying yourself. So if we treat these expenses as everything except paying yourself, what that allows you to see is the business itself, before shelling out anything for me, is making $1,500. And then you can more clearly evaluate and say, if this was a job being offered to me for $1,500 in salary, would I accept this job? No, I better do something different. If you take the salary ahead of time, you're going to be a little bit confused to be like, is this business worth pursuing or not? So I like to use the bottom line to just capture it that way. And then of course you have the secondary decision of the $1,500. Do I want to pay it out as a salary or a dividend? But that one, and you can kind of choose when and how you end up paying it. But yeah, my recommendation would be to treat it as a bottom line. But you could, if you felt more confident with it, you could actually adjust these to be your salaries included in there. But just be very cognizant when you're looking at the bottom line and you're showing a loss, you're just thinking through, is the loss because of what salary I'm including?
Yeah, I really love how you said you're evaluating it like, would I take this job for that much? I think that's a wonderful way to conceive of it. So thanks.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because essentially you're pouring time and effort into it. There's an opportunity cost on that. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, expenses section tends to be a little bit more straightforward for people. So you go through, you avoid the temptation of filling them out all at once. You want to get a complete list of your expenses. And then you do the tedious nitty gritty, populate them all in here. You're going to populate them with your best guess. It's not going to be perfect the first time, and that is okay. This populating the expenses is super tedious. So I usually suggest like pick a song that you really like that you can play on repeat over and over. So just choose a song and you're like, hey, that's my song. I'm just going to get myself in like financial planning mode and just plug them all away. And so what this is going to be, you can kind of refine it. You can put some different expenses in here. But what it's ultimately going to do all the way down here is tally up all of the different expenses you included. So down on this line here is going to be a subtotal. So what you can actually see is it looks like our expenses are around $3,000 a month, except something unique is happening in the month of September. And in the month of September, she realized, oh yeah, I want to do some advanced training to be an even better web designer because that way I could charge even more. So we see that there's a little bit of a spike here in that particular month. And some things that she's just happening, she's thinking maybe she's going to need more office supplies in a particular month. It can just help you kind of look at things from that particular way. Now, remember always with a finance plan, the reason you're doing it is to inform your decisions. So you're going to want to come here all the way to the different total, and you're going to want to say, oh, wow, I'm spending $11,400, like the biggest thing that I'm spending money on, and I'll put it in yellow so you can see it. You're going to want to look through and say, like, are the things I'm spending the most money on the things that make the biggest impact? So she might look at this and she's like, what on earth am I spending $11,400? Oh, taxes. Okay, well, can't really do too much. I can do a few things to optimize my taxes, but it kind of is what it is. But she might look through and she'd say like, well, what am I spending this $500 on? And she might look and say, well, this subcontractor, and she might kind of evaluate like, is this worth my while? Is it not? Kind of like looking through her expenses and deciding, consistently looking at the expenses and figuring out what to spend money on. So like I said, she's kind of populated a few opportunities for her, which is increase her hourly rate when she completes the training on a new tool, maybe introducing a new package in the future. Maybe one of her other opportunities will be saying, hey, I'm using MailChimp for my email, but I didn't realize there's like $120 a year. There's like, her opportunity might be explore free option for email, right? So like the important thing is not the specific opportunity, but it's the fact that she's pausing and looking and she's saying, what can I do to increase revenue? What can I do to decrease expenses or spend expenses more strategically? And then ultimately at the end of the year, what is all of this effort? My plan materializes. What am I going to make? I'm going to make 46K is going to be what I could pay myself from all of this effort. And yeah, is that a good investment of my time? So that is basically the way you use it. You can make these as complicated or as simple as you want. I'm a big fan of just keep it really simple because by keeping it simple, you're more likely to do it. But you can adapt it. You can change the template. You can make it work for your specific business. But the most important thing is that you actually do it, right? And you actually keep it as a live document because you want to be tweaking it all of the time. I'll show you and I'll pop into the chat where you can actually download a copy of it. So this is our company website, and you have down here, you can click download, and I do have the presentation on there. You can find a few other things on our website that are totally free just to help people learn about finances. So we have a few different courses included, just the short little tidbits to be able to learn different things. We have an interactive course and then of course the YouTube channel, but this will be the link that I'll pop in here that you can use to grab a copy of the template and the slides. So I know we're a little short on time for any questions, but I am happy to take questions or to reach out anytime for questions afterwards. But is there any question in there I could try to answer in 3 minutes?
Yeah, no, you were able to tackle them all as we went along. I would just have maybe one final one to pose to you, and you kind of did already mention it briefly there at the end of doing this all the time. But if someone wanted to make a bit of a schedule of pulling this up and, put it in their calendar of today's the day that I'm going to revisit my finance plan, how often or what frequency would you recommend around that?
I would recommend at least once a month. Now, when you're starting, things are moving a lot faster. I would say in a perfect world, you would be looking at this like regularly, right? Because what ends up happening is people will spend all this time and effort doing organic social media, and they'll fill all of their days doing busy things, but they're not checking in to say, is this actually driving revenue or driving indicators of revenue? Or they'll end up spending all of this money without stopping and pausing to reflect. So once a month, I would say, is the minimum. And I think at the very end of the month is a nice way just to put like a calendar to say, like, the very first calendar day of every single month, dust off this plan and look at it and then say, like, what actually happened over the last 30 days? So over the last 30 days in September, did I get three? Did I get three new clients, or did some really big expense come up that I had no idea and I need to kind of adjust? But yeah, if you kind of remember like the first calendar day of every month, that is a good place to start. Ideally, this would be something that's really, this is your strategy for your plan, right? So ideally you're looking at it as often as you need to make different decisions, and then you're coming back and you're informing it based on it. But I would say a minimum once a month. It can be tough to do. You might want to choose like an entrepreneur buddy to kind of say like, hey, today is our day. Like, did you do it? Yeah, I did it. Like, because the reality is no one's going to knock on your door being like, did you create your finance plan? But if you don't, the risk of just continuing to do the same thing again and again is what people will do. And you really want to give yourself that reality check to be like, okay, what I'm going to spend my time and effort and money on the next 30 days, is this the right thing? So yeah, maybe find an accountability buddy and hold each other accountable to be like, yeah, did you do it? And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, that's the biggest mistake. People don't do it because they're like, oh, it has to be like 100% polished. Like, even if you do 10 minutes and the plan isn't great, the fact that you're reflecting on how your activities translate into dollars is really the key.
Okay, great. One snuck in here at the end. I think it might just be an Excel question, but Leah had asked earlier, how can you add additional revenue streams? I think she just means if you need more than the 8. Really sure. Just
totally. So if you need more than the 8, what I would do is just simply go down here. So it's set up with 8. You can just see what I'm doing is I'm highlighting all 3, and I'm going to just do insert. Actually, you can insert as many. So let's say you wanted to not have 3. What I'm doing is inserting, and you can just essentially copy these in. So you might need to tweak it a little. Very few people will ultimately end up needing more, but you can copy, insert, copy. There we go. Insert, copy, and we'll just do a double check. So if you do that, the thing you're just going to want to double check at the very end is to make sure that it's added up into the totals. So you just need to make sure this number is ultimately picking it up. So if it's not, again, there's tons of different, just kind of go and you'll add this subtotal, and add this subtotal. And that will now pick it up all the way down here. So if you no longer had 8 revenue streams, you had revenue stream 9, 10, 11, you could actually use that. So if you had all kinds of different ones, you could say that this one is going to be 78 and it was going to be 5 of them. You'll see that it's now picking up the total in there. So it's a little bit manual if you need to go beyond the 8, but essentially all you're doing is copying those rows, adding them in, and then just doing a final check that this row called revenue subtotal is picking it up. The rest will take care of itself down here in the totals. So yeah, just be sure to double check that it's picking up all the cells. So yeah, in theory, you could add it to 100 revenue streams if you really had that many areas.
Well, that's great, Carolyn. Yeah, just I'll say lots of enthusiastic response in the chat here. Gratitude for your presentation. Absolutely. And the tool. And
I'm happy to do it. Yeah, check it out on YouTube. We've got all kinds of 30 or 40 different videos on there. Tons of stuff on our website. So yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. This was fun.